Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening. Leading the news, a pedophile priest who has already served time for abusing a number of young boys has pleaded guilty to new charges of abuse dating back to the 1970s in Tasmania. Harrowing victim impact statements heard inside court, divulging the trauma and ongoing trust issues they continue to battle years on.
Once regarded as a father figure by a child he ended up sexually abusing. Seen here on the right during a previous court hearing, disgraced former priest Louis Daniels today sat emotionless, looking at the floor as he listened to the pain his actions had inflicted on 2 of his victims. One describing the torment as like a scab that would never heal. Across 9 years, beginning in the 1970s, the church leader abused the young boys on a number of occasions, carrying out the sexual acts at church camps, in his vehicle and his home. The court heard that Daniels told one of his victims who he raped it was a secret, and because he's a priest, no one would believe him. The survivor's experience of the traumatic time were read aloud to the court, with Daniels' first victim reading his own statement, describing it as a world of memories and psychological trauma that I keep hidden, saying, "I do my best to manage PTSD symptoms. I find myself exhausted managing the thoughts in my head." Crown Prosecutor Claire Flockhart read out the second survivor's statement, which detailed anxiety and depression. "I have a drinking problem. I don't ever feel good enough. I'm scared to trust people in many situations. I often wonder what my life would be like if this never happened." When referencing the abuse during sentencing submissions, Ms Flockhart told the judge it was not out of character or isolated, and Mr Daniels abused his position as priest. The 75-year-old has already served jail time over separate sexual abuse charges, now facing the prospect of more time behind bars. Daniels has been remanded in custody and will return to the Supreme Court on April 28, when a sentence will be handed down. Grace Evans, 7 Tasmania News.
And if you or anyone you know needs help or this story caused distress, contact the Sexual Assault Support Service on 1800 697 877. And still on court matters, a man accused of murdering a woman at a Campania property 2 weeks ago is yet to enter a plea. James Austin appeared in the Hobart Magistrates Court via video link over the incident that allegedly killed mother of 4 Jackie Purton. The matter has been adjourned and Mr Austin will reappear on April 20. Harness racing stalwarts have warned the industry is headed for disaster if integrity issues aren't addressed. The Minister announcing an independent review today as opposition parties call for her resignation.
The sport he's loved since he was 4, in dire straits. Chester Bullock says he fears for the future of harness racing.
A lot of people in the industry are coming out now and standing up and saying, look, where are we going? How are we going to control it? We're worried whether in 2 years' time it still exists.
Amid allegations of race fixing and animal cruelty, there's now an independent review.
Allegations have been made and I have referred those to Ori. Ori have investigated those, but it is clear that we need the assurance of an independent investigation.
The exact scope still being set, but the Minister says she has full confidence in the Office of Racing Integrity.
We have an understanding that appropriate investigations have been taken into reports. It is about providing that level of certainty and assurance to all stakeholders.
We wouldn't be standing up today if we thought they were doing a great job. Personally, I've been arguing for the last 2 or 3 years on concerns.
The harness racing community has long raised concerns. The state's leading stakeholders group, BOTRA, says those who have are suffering from retaliation. Just last week, Minister Ogilvie told Parliament Tasmanian racing had never been in better shape.
She referred the matter to the Office of Racing Integrity to investigate its own failures. That tells us that her judgment is appalling.
I'm absolutely flabbergasted that she's still in the position, and frankly, Premier Rockcliffe is weak by continuing to allow her in this role.
This review follows the Monteith review. It made widespread recommendations nearly a year ago, including to disband the Office of Racing Integrity. Today, the Premier defended his under-fire racing minister, saying he had full confidence in Madeleine Ogilvie.
We have to maintain confidence in the racing industry, both through integrity and indeed animal welfare.
A social licence hanging in the balance. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmanians will soon be able to see who's having a say in forming policy. Ministerial diaries from the first 3 months of this year will be available to view from April in a move to improve transparency.
What I'd like to see from the government is a commitment to an ongoing monthly release of ministerial diaries so that this becomes a standard part of our accountability and public transparency around decision making.
The last Tasmanian Premier to release diaries was David Bartlett in 2009. They are regularly released in New South Wales, the ACT and Queensland. Here, 21 units of vulnerable older women will soon be completed in Moona. The Premier and Housing Minister touring the site today, along with the operators, the Salvation Army. They'll be offered to those currently languishing on the social housing wait list.
It's so close to the services here in Moona, Hopkins Street.
Research does suggest that women over 55 are more at risk of homelessness. So yeah, that is the reason that these sort of builds are important.
Targets for vulnerable groups like older women or those living with disabilities will be included in a new 20-year housing plan to be released soon. 2 separate fundraising initiatives have combined their results, raising more than $41,000 for the Royal Hobart Hospital's Hallman Clinic. Bordy Panto's Wind in the Willows performance, collecting around $9,000 for the Radiation Centre. But it was the annual Mud Buggy charity ride which raised the bulk of the funds. Its founder connected to the clinic in more ways than one after being diagnosed with stage 4 laryngeal cancer.
It was 33 bouts of radiation treatment. I'm not sure what rad it was, but it was enough to turn around and make me bleed, but it was worth it in the end. I'm 4 years on and still living to beat.
The clinic allocating the funds towards equipment and refurbishment costs.
The patients who come to the Hallman Clinic aren't usually there for a very long time, but they need to be in pleasant, positive surroundings.
And the good work isn't over. Bordy Panto now preparing for this year's charity production, Hansel and Regrettal. A team which took a town of 3,000 to football's stratosphere is lifting the lid on what made the side so special. Scottsdale's legendary lineup of 1973 is reflecting on the extraordinary efforts they made to win that year's title. It's all ahead of a reunion 50 years in the making.
The giant flag nearly eclipses the giant killers of 1973, a team built on disciple-like discipline.
We trained hard, we were fair. If you got caught drinking during the week, tell them you're out. You know, your dress code, if you didn't clean your boots and have clean shorts, don't bother about playing.
You couldn't imagine it today, but back then, Captain Coach Bob Wilson moved to Scottsdale from Essendon in the VFL after answering an advertisement in the Sporting Globe. He took the side all the way to the state final against Cooey in Burnie. To give themselves the best chance of winning, they decided to fly rather than drive.
Weather was real rough, and the pilot called us up. He said, listen, you know, we might have trouble landing. We might have to go to Smithton. And Gordon, our president, said, this is the most important game of the year, mate. We're not going to Smithton. Anyway, he said, what do we have to do to get down? He said, all you got to see a bit of blue sky. And Gordon looked at, there's a bit.
They landed safely, the rest is history. But they had an unlikely motivator in an arrogant ground announcer who told fans at three-quarter time the game was as good as over when Cooey was leading by 32 points.
That was a stupid thing to say. We grew a leg and the shoe was all over.
When the team returned clutching that premiership flag, tradition was for the players to be presented to the entire town from this balcony in the main street, a coronation for the champions of Tasmania. Yielding an invitation to the champions of Australia, a tournament pitting the town of 3,000 against the likes of Richmond, Glenelg and Subiaco. Memories will reignite this weekend when Scottsdale celebrates 50 years since the most famous year in the club's history.
Even when you meet them just in the street and we're all good friends, it always comes back to those times.
Times this proud town will never forget. Tom Johnson, 7 Tasmania News.
A study 5 years in the making has found the Tasmanian tiger might have survived past the 1980s. Thylacine experts analysing more than 1,000 observational records dating back to 1910, including museum archives, newspaper clippings and notes from possible sightings.
It was illegal to kill a thylacine from 1936 onwards. So we have these sightings that go on many decades later that there's various explanations as to why they might be real but not producing that hard physical evidence that people want.
Professor Brooke is now hoping to fill in more information gaps, investigating the species' preferred habitats and prey. Rare and original artworks created by Spanish surrealist Salvador Dali will soon be on show for the public. Dada Muse, a new art museum, has taken over a historic building in Launceston, offering a private collection set to attract international attention.
Art aficionados are rejoicing with a new museum in town.
It's very exciting. Australia and the world don't know that this collection actually exists in Australia to date. It's the largest works on paper collection by Salvador Dali.
Most of the Spanish artist's work has never been seen publicly, providing a unique offering for Tasmania.
Salvador Dali was part of the Dadaism movement and then went on to surrealism, where he really became famous. He's quite eccentric and he's known for that, and did some very, very crazy artworks, but they're all wonderful.
Some recognisable Dali pieces showcasing the beautiful and bizarre are on display, including his popular work titled Sleep.
It's an important tourism offering for Northern Tasmanians, for Launcestonians. We've been looking for additional things to add to our visitor experience. I think this will become a jewel in the crown as well.
Launceston's newest museum is based at the historic Johnston and Wilmot building, which has been given a new lease on life.
It's extremely special. Lots of people know this as the 1842 building of Launceston. It's architecturally unique, and we've tried to retain a lot of the historic features.
Features including the tin room, which was originally used to store grains in the 19th century.
We're really thrilled to see the restoration of this iconic building, and we're really delighted to be able to welcome this museum and all that it will bring visitors and hype to Launceston.
Combining culture, art and history into a single space, the Dada Museum will officially open its doors next Wednesday. McKenna Bailey, 7 Tasmania News.
As the NBL prepares to enter its free agency period during the week, the Jack Jumpers head coach is continuing his tour of the North, today announcing a new partnership with Mazda. Scott Roth also giving an update on where MVP Milton Doyle's contract stands.
Milton's been a #1 priority for us for the last 4 to 6 weeks since the season's been over, and as the season was winding down, to get him signed. And again, I think we're in an outstanding position with him, and then we can continue to think about now Friday when we start to build the rest of the roster out.
The head coach is also keeping tabs on Tasmanian brothers Trey and Taron Armstrong, with plans to watch them play for the Northwest Thunder next week. Launceston City is sitting comfortably in top spot on the ladder after defeating the Glenorchy Knights in round 2 of Tasmania's National Premier League. The men's side breaking a deadlock in the dying minutes of the game.
It was pretty much a perfect day, honestly, with Joel's 150th and our young guy Jack Woodland getting the winner right at the end. I mean, that's why we love football. That's why we play.
Meanwhile, South Hobart's women's side is also pleased with its performance, drawing with the Devonport Strikers despite being down at half-time.
Good old Kenny Morton came into the change room and sort of revved us up and just said, you know, like, skill-wise, we've got the capacity to win, and you've got to give everything you can. Like, every game is just as important as the others.
Both teams are hoping to keep the momentum going this weekend.
Good evening. Hobart 16 degrees, more than 4 below average today. Launceston along with Cressy, Scottsdale and Flinders Island our top of 21. Devonport and Burnie 18 degrees. St Helens 19, Lowhead 18, Smith and Friendly Beaches, Grove and Strawn all 17. King Island 16 today, Ouse and Lyowini a high of 15. The clouds started to gather today with extensive cover eventually all over the state. More cloud stretches from central WA through to the eastern states. Thunderstorms in the cloud over northeast New South Wales and southern Queensland. Tomorrow a high starts to track over Western Australia, however a broad trough cuts right through the heart of the country. The winds from an easterly direction and up to 20 to 30 knots ahead of a late northwesterly change. And fairly strong winds too that morning from Sandy Cape all the way around and back up to Low Rocky Point. Forecast tomorrow, Hobart showery and 17, 19 with a shower or two increasing over Adventure Bay, 14 the top for Tarraleah. Launceston 17 degrees with rain, Devonport the same and 19 the top for Bridport. Wet weather also for Burnie, a top of 17 degrees, showers increasing over the west, Strahan 18 along with Marrawar. St Helens tomorrow a top of 18 degrees, Swansea 18 as well, Whitemark 20 all with rain. UV in the moderate zone for tomorrow at 5. On Wednesday showers, but they will contract to the west and far south in the afternoon. A few more showers on Thursday, mainly over the west and south again. And on Friday showers initially over the west, far south and Bass Strait ahead of an extension statewide in the afternoon. Sunny and 27 in Perth, a shower developing in Adelaide and Melbourne. Possible storms for Canberra and Sydney, but a fine, warm, sunny 33 in Brisbane. Cloud about over Hobart, it's 14, cloudy in Launceston and the rain starting to fall in Devonport, Kim. All those AFL injuries in tonight's sport, I know how they feel. I was watching Tom Wolfe and Pete Cornelius' Beatles show on the weekend in a beanbag. Then when I tried to get out, bang, meniscus gone, hammy gone. That's it for me for the week.
You want some days off, I'm sure, that poor beanbag. And that is all your news for now. We'll be back later with updates. Thanks for joining us this evening. Good night.